Welcome to a Comfort Zone retrospective on Kismet Radio in partnership with These Days. We're your hosts, Tara and Pedro, and we're broadcasting from south-facing windows. This July, Saba celebrated the 10th anniversary of his cult classic, Comfort Zone, an ambitious 14-track project that ultimately defined his musical journey. To celebrate the occasion, These Days and Kismet published an oral history of the tape, which saw Pedro speak to 17 contributors and friends who had been involved in the making of Comfort Zone. We thought it would be cool for our collab to also include an audio piece, so here we are with the Comfort Zone retrospective, a limited series where we unpack all 14 tracks, welcome some special guests, and generally nerd out on music. How are you doing today, Pedro?
I'm doing swell.
Yeah?
Yes.
We're gonna listen to our first song. This is For Y'all.
And even if we don't get rich about this bitch, we don't get ticks on Priceline quick enough to where they jump way up. And you can't afford this shit, and we still gon' do it, my nigga. We still gon' screw on them bitches. A couple of pills, if that what you into. If that what you into, I feel you, it's real. I think in my mental, it come with the deal. As long as you been through, I treat you like blood. Then I treat you like cuz it was us and them red stripes on the corner every night. Argue though you dead right, and I'm dead wrong. No headlights and them red lights behind us, they don't mean nothing.
You wanna start with themes, Pedro?
Yeah, I think for y'all, compared to last episode where we were seeing a little bit more of a darker feeling, a little bit more somber, this is a little bit of a bounce back from that. For y'all, it's such a high point in this record. It also kind of comes almost midway through it, so I think we've talked about this at Nuance, but Saba's thinking how the track list works. And the theme for y'all, I think it's a lot of gratefulness, kinship, family, friends, and like what this all means for him and also for Tree, who's a featured guest here. This is a record that's really happy. It's a really good feeling, like almost you're on the other side of those previous feelings that had you down in the past records. Yeah. How did you think about this record?
I mean, I think it's a good break from the emotions we see in Welcome Home and 401k. Like Erin is brought back, you know, and her vocals are really bright and shimmering, and it just stands in stark contrast to like what we were getting from Saba. And like, you know, so it's a thank you. It's a thank you to the support system. Again, I think about the responsibility and like everything that weighs on his shoulders, you know, and how he knows this is bigger than him. This is not just about him. And not just about his crew, but this is about the West Side. This is about Chicago. Like you know, when you pull out, it's about him. It's about Pivot Gang. It's about West Side. It's about Chicago. You know, it's about being a black boy in America. You know, so
yeah, he's always thinking in like micro and macro levels and balancing those two. I was nodding hard to what you were saying because the previous songs is a little bit more of a doubt, right? And this one is more about celebrating with his day ones and what those people kind of feel, right? Which is, I don't know, just like all these different layers that Saba can think through and put these different like perspectives all into one project. Yeah,
and again, it's like the peaks and valleys, so we're at a peak, you know? We find Saba in good spirits.
Yes. And you kind of see him also revert back a little bit to that youthfulness that maybe we didn't see as much in the previous two songs, but like he's referencing a lot of like cartoons like Cat Dog and Jimmy Neutron and doing it in a really fun way.
Wait, say the Cat Dog line. What, we were watching Cat Dog, now I'm a rap star. Was it something like that, right?
Something like that, yeah. Rockin' Fat Farm.
Yeah.
Now you're a rap star.
Cat Dog.
He also starts that verse talking about how he's on his second bowl of cereal. And I'm like, that's so real. I can never just eat one bowl of cereal.
Also, can I be really real? I never liked Cat Dog.
It freaked me out too. I
mean, well, never mind. We don't have to psychoanalyze Cat Dog, but I just did not enjoy it. I just didn't.
That's a very specific type of like Nickelodeon type of show.
Yeah, it was like a softened Ren and Stimpy or something. I don't know. I think like, you know, there is, like you said, there's a youthfulness in this song with like the references to cartoons, but there's also like the sort of apocalyptic dystopian undercurrent, you know?
Yeah, he talks about how, you know, the city's on the rise on decadent anthems and also something around like the city being on the brink of extinction. So like he does such a good job at placing you in these worlds where you're like, okay, like cartoons and life. It's beautiful. The song is super
But
jovial.
what do you think he's means by decadent? Like what in particular is?
So I think we're also entering like the section where he starts talking about how Chief Keef and all these artists from the drill genre are making songs that are super nihilistic and super aggressive. And these are decadent anthems that like the city is being put on the map. Again, like this is like 2012, 2013, when all these like Lil Durk, all those guys are being brought up. And I think he's speaking to that in that line.
That's interesting because, in the oral history, isn't this the song where he says...
I think it's for Scum, but they're kind of tied together.
Yeah. Well, he says, we are not trying to fuck around with music. Like, I mean, he's taking it seriously, and I mean, I think that seriousness and like the thinking like his support system and like knowing that it's like very synergetic sort of relationship. Like,
yeah, I also feel like the song, it's a good kind of embodiment of who Saba is, because he's like a really, I don't know if like goofy is the right word, but like really funny and could be like, crack jokes. But you can see it. He's always kind of thinking about like the bigger like threats and like the more heavier stuff. It's always like in the back of his mind, and he's never not at least thoughtful of those things and the context that in which he lives in.
Yeah, maybe that's why people pigeonhole him as a grief rapper, because even when the songs are like really hard or really knock, like you still get that layer of, I don't know, the undertow of sadness.
Yeah, he could also definitely be like, if he wanted to be like a culture critic, and because he's so good as like, I almost see him as a journalist, right? Reporting what he's seeing on the ground level and being able to pull from all these different references, like this is happening, but because there's all this background that also led up to this point. And for y'all, he lets a little bit lose that, but you never really, he's a little bit more loose, but he never actually loses that aspect of his writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for him, he can't think of his city without, like he has to think of a city through the guise of like socioeconomics and like how the city was set up with redlining and all those sorts of like elements that like further ostracized like the west side and the south side, but really the west side, from I mean, it's like a food desert, the lack of resources. I mean, when people think about the west side versus the south side, there's even, a stark contrast there.
This song also, it has a lot of like gems for me. Like another one is that he talks about how he started hating the song as he was writing it, and he gives that line. It talks about how seriously he takes his craft. But also just to leave that is kind of like just a funny moment of like, you know what?
I feel that shit though. Like, you definitely, as a writer, if you hate some shit you're writing, you definitely have to leave. But I think that's like anything. Like if you're creating anything, like you need some space. So that is very like on the nose.
Yeah, and that's a good kind of segue to the production aspect of it. Like this is produced by Kamobi, Nasen, and Ben Free. And when I was talking to Kamobi about this record, he was telling me that when he first heard that line, he was a little bit, I don't know if hurt, but like he was like bummed out. He was like, oh, he doesn't like the song. But now that Kamobi is starting to record more of his own music and write, he's like, I 100% feel that, and I'm so glad that he kept it because it makes me feel more connected to like, the artistry as a whole.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kamobi, at that time, he was like a super sought out producer in Chicago. He had done crucial work for Chance as a rap and Biggs and in a tape. I think at the time he was also, I don't know if it had already come out, but Mick Jenkins' tape. He had a production credit there. And he later on had a lot of issues with this, but like he also had a proximity to the Justice League production team that was mainstream at the time. So people in Chicago really like looked after him to like record records. And I believe it was Nasen actually who introduced Kamobi and Saba. And Kamobi is such a artist and such a fan of music that in the oral history he speaks to how he became like such a big fan of the jump from Saba, which is really cool to see a producer at that level, seeing an artist who was not making major headlines, but had the quality to recognize that they want to work with him. He spoke about how Saba and the Chicago in general had more of like a melodic rap, kind of like he speaks to the Far Side and some other West Coast groups, but also mentions Bone Thugs and Harmony, which is one of Saba's biggest inspirations, right? So that all kind of built up this like almost instant synergy and chemistry between Saba and Cam Obi in making this record.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Cam.
Yeah, and he also was thinking a lot about at this time of like those late registration Kanye West records where, you know, it's a little bit cartoonish, which it just
feeds into the cartoon references.
Yes. Nasen had actually started the beat and then tapped in Cam Obi to like work on it. And Nasen himself is kind of like a Chicago legend. Said I think his first production credit was when he was 18 and it was on a 50 Cent album.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. He had like flown out to New York and just through good luck and a little bit of effort on his part, he landed on whatever 50 Cent's label. What's it called?
Damn, what can I?
It's not Aftermath, but
G-Unit.
G-Unit, yeah. And I think he gave an A&R there, like his beats. He became kind of known in the city to working with people like LEP, Bogus Boys and stuff. Like Nasen has always kept an ear on what's happening in Chicago, and that's another person that saw Saba's talent right away, and they are collaborators to this day.
Yeah.
So this record has a lot of heavyweight like producers, Saba and Aaron Kane as a singer, and then kind of like the missing piece was Ben Free, who was connected years before this by Cam Obi with Nasen, and then they all worked together. Ben Free provided like the keys, which is like I would say the bedrock of this record.
Yeah. Yeah, and this song is a good segue into Scum. I feel like it provides the verse 2 provides a glimpse into like what he talks about in Scum. You know, just like how people look down on people who live in the inner city. So, you know.
Yeah,
but it's like that, you know, a song about gratitude and all that, but it's still, again, you know, these themes show up.
Yeah, and I think it's just because that's really the life that, you know, they lived and stuff. But Saba said it that it's almost future looking, like he was envisioning this being like their thank you speech once they made it, like they were not there yet, which is really cool to see kind of like he was manifesting that success. And that I think manifesting is a big thing across Saba's records, right? And he brings that perspective and then tags along Tree, who's a much older rapper and has a much soulful voice that has kind of like that, almost like Saba's kind of imagining that future. Tree is kind of like the leverage of like, I'm in that future and like hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
And he kicks off the verse like in the best way possible by speaking of like, even if we don't have enough money, we'll still find a way to like go out on trips and stuff like that. So it's just a really cool feature that makes a lot of sense in a record.
Yeah, that was your best guess first.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna listen to the next song. This is Scum.
We killing GD name and get judged by GPA. Shit, if we don't like the same food, how they expect us to eat the same? How learning different? Burning bridges to earn a living. Raise your blood pressure, no tourniquet, but expect you to turn a cheek. Major turn of events when you turn 18. They kicked you out of your middle school. Said your work was pitiful. Mama's loan didn't get approved. So you got a gun, looking just like dumb. Cause with the cap and gown and capping down, you called scum. Why they call us scum? From the city slums.
You wanna start with themes?
Yeah, for Scum, that's a very nuanced record. And I think the theme here is like the representation of a person's full humanity, specifically speaking of Chicagoan from like either the west side or south side. Saba, I said in a previous segment that he kind of reminds me of a journalist or a culture critic. I think he could also be like an anthropologist or like, and he's kind of doing like an ethnographic here of like showing a person in its full self and like how he arrived to be in that, right? It's also done in such a disarming way. He is speaking in this record about the time where in the news you're just seeing like young black kids in Chicago are super violent and doing all these crazy shit. He's kind of taking the peeling off of that and showing like these are actual humans and they're like actually having lives that are affected by all these different situations. And it creates a very compelling story that I think, and I'm gonna keep coming back, but he's like 18, 19 at the time writing songs like this, so it's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think like he tries not to show a binary. I mean, I feel like this is the age of Chirac, right? And the world looking at Chicago one way, or only seeing it through one lens, and Saba presenting, like showing it that the city has multitudes. And I mean, pushing back on that idea, which is very much a reality, but it's just really frustrating when, like, for a time, even I would tell people, I live in Chicago, or I'm from St. Louis, and like their reaction. Like, it's just very singular kind of thought process, very reductive, so. Yeah,
reductive, and like he also speaks to like it being a binary view of, there's the drill rappers, and then they would put Chance and Vic on the other side, and Vic Mensa on the other side. Like, these are, the model, I guess, citizens or whatever. But he, again, is scrubbing all of that and saying, like, these people actually kind of, like, live in the same areas, and, they share a lot of the same livelihoods. It's just the way that they approach their art might be different, or the way that they move on a day-to-day is different. And being able to humanize people, especially at a time where like the music industry in itself was asking artists not to do that, right? Or like incentivizing people to either go like the super violent way or the super happy way. It was very bold of him at that time, for sure.
Yeah, definitely felt like extremes. One side of the coin is Chief Keef, the other side is Chance the Rapper, type thing. Yeah,
and I don't think Saba ever really has been driven by what the trends are.
Yeah.
And it shows in these type of records.
Yeah, definitely. But this has my favorite guest verse on it from Fresh Waters. And I think it's really interesting because before the release of this, they put out Jimmy, right? That was the name of it? And I believe he doesn't appear on it.
He doesn't, but he is the centerpiece.
Yes, exactly. So, and again, like, Saba makes these mentions of Fresh on Time Zone, and then another song, and but now we finally hear from him. Yeah. And he sounds far away. He sounds disconnected. Obviously, he's incarcerated at this time, and in the oral history, he talks about how they literally put him on speakerphone and recorded him, right? And like that texture, like not only does Fresh already have like his own tone and texture to his voice is like amazing to me. Like, he's one of my favorite voices, but like an added layer of, being far away. And then it just feels almost literal, like he's removed. Like the lack of proximity, there's a lack of proximity. He's excited about all these big moments that Saba and Pivot Gang are experiencing, and he can't be part of it. So. Yeah,
the story there is incredible. And almost out of a movie, right? Like, he is incarcerated, I think, right before things really started like moving for Pivot Gang and Saba. They decided to drop that mixtape as Pivot Gang, Jimmy, in honor of him. 2013, almost 6 months or a year before ComfortZone. And in between those times, Fresh is still checking in on them, like through those collective call in jail, and making sure that he's trying to play a role and making sure that the people are sharp in the lines. I've heard him talk about this before too. Like he when he would go on the call, he would ask people to like spit bars for him and just make sure that like their standard is high, and finding ways for him to impact the collective, even though he wasn't physically there. And then on the other side, people were like Saba, Joseph, Mello, they were all always saying like, we felt that presence and we felt that need to show up for him. And when Saba asked them to spit a verse, I think Fresh mindset at that point is like any other verse that they're doing regularly on a freestyle, but Saba really wanted this on his record. And it took Fresh a little bit by surprise, but when he found out that he was going to be on the record, he had like one of the officers at the jail like have to play it through the Bluetooth speakers. Mm-hmm. The day it was released, that's the first time that Fresh heard his voice in that project. That's
so cool. And like, Fresh is such a great guy, you know. I mean, I can only imagine like how he's so encouraging now, and I can only imagine how encouraging he was, you know, even removed. And he used to do this thing back when I met him, like in 2016, where he would like send you like, he would text me, and I'm sure other people, like motivational, I don't know, just texts. And he would always sign it church, which is like obviously his phrase, but I don't know, it's just like, it just really speaks to like who Fresh is as a person, and like how he was the glue of this group even when he couldn't be around.
And it, like, I think that's such a smart way to like utilize him in the context of the record, in the context of the song specifically, because in a lot of ways he is that person that Saba's speaking to, right? Like that he's already been stereotyped by
He's
media.
also almost mythical, you know what I mean? Like he's like, they make a whole tape called Jimmy, and then, you know, Saba alludes to him on a couple of tracks already before we even hear from him, you know, and it's almost just like, I mean, when you finally do hear from him, I don't know, I just think it's the best guest verse.
Yeah, it's like, it's very poetic. Yeah. And both Fresh and Saba are very poetically driven people. Yeah. But somebody with, like, I don't know, like Fresh's record, you might think like, oh, again, like, and the mass media, that like they might have a perception of him. But if you get to know Fresh, you get to know like the sweetest, most encouraging person there is, right? Yeah. So it's he is the embodiment of what kind of Saba's trying to express in this record. And then the verse, even though it's a little bit hard because of the, like, he's literally on the phone trying to get these bars up. I know. The verse is so good. I know. The verse is so good. It's so him.
I know. And it's like, and it just hits so hard. And because doesn't the production like die down a little? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just him. It's kind of like a cappella.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of the production, what I really enjoyed about it too was this record is not that different for 401k. Again, showing all the nuances and like contextualizing why things are happening. But whereas 401k is really angry, like the melody on Scum is a little bit like more of a, and Saba calls it this way, like a nursery rhyme, you know, very simple, very like tender. And he, like his voice and the way that he delivers, it's like kind of like, he's not trying to force you into his perspective or like, whereas 401k is super, super angry. This is more like, hey, I just want to be understood. I just want you in the best way possible, understand where we're coming from. And just being able to have different points of entry into like these thinkings and these themes that he wants to approach is speaks to the work that has. Yeah. And just like a final note on this record, he also tapped in Jamila Woods for this song, more for like the harmonies and background vocals. And it really rounds out the production where he is truly the mastermind of how he wants it to sound, the sonics, and how he wants you to feel. So in the span of 4 records, right, we get all these different emotions from Dao's sadness to really happy and grateful to like a little bit of more hoping to be understood. And he's doing it really well with artists that years later on become not only strong collaborators, but big artists in their own right.
Yeah, it seems like a catch-all for a lot of the emotions we've seen from him so far.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Thank y'all for tuning in to a Comfort Zone retrospective with Kismet Radio on These Days. On the next episode, we'll dig into the next 3 songs, West Side Bound, Whip, and West Side Bound 2. Till then.